Coming up, America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis from a psychological point of view. But first, welcome to Imagine Peace, the podcast that invites you on a transformative journey toward a world filled with harmony and understanding. Together, let's ignite the flame of peace within ourselves and radiate it outward so we can have a future where unity prevails. This is Imagine Peace, where dreams become reality. Join us as we explore the power of compassion, the beauty of diversity, and the potential for positive change. Welcome to Imagine Peace, sponsored by 10 Million for World Peace. Check us out at 10millionforworldpeace.org and join our daily 7-minute guided meditation. Together we can create a peaceful, happy planet. So today we have Phyllis Leavitt. She holds a master's degree in psychology and counseling with over 34 years of experience. She has treated children, families, couples, and individual adults for 34 years and has worked extensively with abuse and dysfunctional family dynamics, their aftermath, and some of the most important elements of healing. She has authored 2 books, and her latest, America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis, explores the psychological roots of violence in America from a psychological point of view, with the goal of bringing the best of what heals relationships and restores us to safety into national conversation. Phyllis currently resides in Taos, New Mexico, and is dedicated to writing and speaking. Phyllis, I am really delighted to have you join me here today. And welcome.
Well, thank you. And I'm delighted to be here. I love the title of your podcast and your work. And thank you so much for having me.
Totally my pleasure. So let's just jump right in. And I want to speak to you about mental health, our nation's mental health. What do you think about our mental health in this country?
Well, I think that, there's so much news about partisan politics and different ideologies that have led to so much divisiveness and threats of violence and overt violence. And I think all my years of being a psychotherapist have shown me that what we're suffering from is not really an ideological or partisan divide. It looks that way as a symptom, but underneath it is a decline in our mental health. And the reason why I say that is because people who are mentally healthy, who have either done some healing work and healed the wounds that they've suffered, or they have practiced, healthy family dynamics or had that role modeled for them, which are loving and caring and dedicated to peaceful conflict resolution and honoring of diversity, cooperation, really enhancing our inclusiveness and our sense of belonging with one another and valuing each other. People who are mentally healthy and have either grown up that way or attained that kind of value system don't hurt other people. They're not violent when there's conflict. They don't exploit other human beings. They're not cruel. And so some of the things that we see being enacted both on local levels in families and, as a therapist of many, many years, I've seen terrible violence happening within individual families. It's being passed down from one generation to another. And on the larger levels of our communities, our schools, our businesses, our higher institutions, and on the level of government and a nation, many of the policies and laws that we enact and enforce are cruel to whole segments of our population. They're withholding, they're alienating, they're making other, and they're enacting violence. And so I call this looking at the dysfunction of the family of America, not through the lens of who we can hate or blame, but how did we get here? And what do we know from the best psychology and the best psychotherapy that could actually help us heal as a nation the way we all want that kind of healing in our own lives?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, but how do you enact something like that? that if you have, I understand that we need to work at the individual levels, and perhaps you could create policies at the higher government levels. What are your suggestions?
Well, for one thing, I think the place to begin is with education. I think a lot of people don't really understand the effects of some of the psychology and the principles of human relations that we're living under right now, that we've kind of accepted that some people win and some people lose. Some people are entitled to feel like they're the good guys and make other people the bad guys. That we have this sort of win-lose paradigm that we're living in, and it creates excesses of domination and submission. It creates excesses of some people have more and some people have way less. It creates racial, religious, gender divides and judgment and policies that enforce keeping some people, in an inferior or less powerful position while other people are in control. So all of those dynamics, if they were to play out on an individual level in a family to the extreme that some of them are playing out in our larger institutions and country today, we would call them abuse dynamics. If someone was hated for the color of their skin, or they weren't provided good housing or equal education or access to medical care, if this was happening in a family, we would say there was disturbance in that family, and what happened to that family, and how can we help them heal so that they're taking care of every family member. And that's the lens that I want to bring to America, because we are a family. We're the family of America. All groups, large and small, operate on family dynamics. So the first part is education. And my book is kind of divided into different segments. Part of it is just educating through my personal experience, my professional experience, and case studies. What are those dynamics that are unhealthy? And how do they affect people? And what are the lasting symptoms that we see in individual families when there is abuse or dysfunction or neglect? And how are we seeing them manifesting in the nation? What is it costing us in terms of safety and belonging and provision? And then what do we know from the best psychotherapy and the best psychology actually helps people heal? So part of it seems quite obvious to me, and I think it really is to a lot of people, but we don't have a mechanism to enact it yet, that when people come to therapy, they're in pain. And I would say 99%, if not 100% of the pain that brings people to therapy is disrupted relationships with other people, not being able to find the love that we want, or the safety we want, or the feeling of belonging, or the feeling of being valued or included, or whatever it is. And we want to, when people, let's just say a couple comes to therapy, we really help people try to cross that bridge to one another, to hear each other deeply, to develop empathy, to restrain themselves when they have impulses to retaliate or lash out or storm out or threaten. We help people listen deeply and develop empathy, not just for themselves, but that's also really important, but for others, and include other points of view in a safe environment. And I like to imagine that we could ask that of Congress and our leaders, that we have facilitated conversations that are designed to help people really listen to sometimes very deep opposing points of view, but to listen with respect and to try to hear if there's something of value that they could relate to in what the other person is saying, or come to some agreement, some compromise, somewhere that they could live in peace together for the sake of the family of America. Because we know on the individual level, when parents, for instance, are fighting, their children are really impacted. They're impacted. Their lives are upset, and their children and their extended relationships are all impacted by the hostilities that don't get resolved. And we here in the family of America, whether we're the target of a specific policy that hurts us or not, we're all affected by the hurt being done to the people, many people around us. So the best psychology helps heal. And could we bring some of those skills, some of those tools to our larger institutions? Could we talk about them in the news? Not just what the great divides are, but what do we need to try to heal them and come back together?
Wouldn't
And
it be wonderful if there was a code of conduct that was enforceable
yes,
for Congress, just as a starting place, you know?
exactly. And it
Yeah,
wouldn't be that
with
hard.
respect. And it's unfortunate because we're seeing very abusive situations and people acting from such great hostility and acting out. It's really it's very sad. But I think
Right.
that could be a very good starting place. Would be like, as you said, with Congress. And I could see a code, like the first,
Mhm.
like a 10 commandments for Congress.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
having trained facilitators that actually help navigate those sticky places, like a therapist can help a couple navigate the really, fraught issues that they have. Um, but one of the reasons why I feel like psychology is such a missing piece in national conversation and why we're seeing the ill effects of that, which you're talking about, is because psychology is all about healing relationship. It's not about furthering divisiveness. No therapist encourages a couple or a family to fight more, to try to beat each other at whatever the issue is, but to really help people hear each other and develop empathy and want to reach some kind of reconciliation and reconnection with each other. Because I can't emphasize that enough. That's what we all want in our own lives. We want more love. We want more of a sense of belonging. We want more peaceful cooperation and nonviolent conflict resolution in our own lives. And the gap between what we want in our own lives and what's happening on these larger levels is a psychological issue that we've been told is an ideological one, and it's not.
No, I agree with you. I think that having having a reconstruction, shall we say, and bringing in just rules of conduct, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure they have, but that maybe they're just not following.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would be a really good place for people to start. Um, yeah, and I also like the idea of bringing in some um, well documented, rules for discussion
Right,
and respect and and just to create a whole different scenario there. I think it could be a really great tool. So I also um and also to create a sense of belonging together,
right,
because in the past the parties could disagree with each other, but they worked together across the aisle. But now,
right,
there's so much hostility and verbal abuse
right,
and just
right.
downright nastiness that no, I agree. It would be really lovely to see some changes. So now, on another note, I know that you practice meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, do you believe it's possible for us to create world peace through meditation?
Well, I think there's many different practices and for meditation. Obviously, there's, many, many, many ways that people meditate. And for me, the essence has always been to contact my greatest self, my deepest connection to love, to and to humanity and to the earth. And so for me, yes, I think that there's a really powerful tool and understanding that many people don't know, and also because some people have associations with meditation that are not necessarily positive or helpful. But if the focus with whatever avenue you take is really in contacting your highest self and your best loving connected essence, then the chances for you bringing that out into the world of the people around you and the situations and circumstances you interact with is so much greater. And the other thing that I would say from my personal experience, and I don't know that this is everyone's personal experience, but I started, trying to learn how to meditate when I was a lot younger than I am now. And one of the things that my meditation showed me was it really lit up my wounded self. It showed me where the darkness was in myself, where the unconsciousness was in myself, where the wounds were in myself. So it really pointed me in the direction of what needed healing. And so, in a funny way, meditation also pointed me toward the world of psychology, which is where I did a lot of the healing work that I did for myself and my own traumas from childhood. And so, I see the world of meditation and the world of psychology as very intricately connected.
Oh, that's beautiful, Phyllis. I
Thank
love that. Yeah,
you.
meditation can give you clarity, and it also creates a peaceful center within yourself,
Right.
which can be extended outwards, definitely. So, what do you think about having Congress meditate before before their sessions?
I think we're not there yet.
I don't think we're there yet.
I think we're not there yet. But what I do think is that, I mean, meditation can lead to psychological wellness or to an impulse to heal on a psychological level. And the reverse is also true. I've had a number of clients who really came just to therapy just to heal the pain in their relationship life and or the traumas of abuse and neglect in their childhood, who out of their healing on an emotional level really connected very spontaneously to their deepest self, to their essence, whatever you want to call that, their real self, their soul. We have different names for it. But that healing brought them to that connection. And it wasn't pre-planned. It wasn't even on their agenda. It just happened naturally. So I just feel like that healing can happen from so many different directions.
Oh, I agree. So what do you think the first step would be in our country? And we haven't even talked about the world.
Right. And it's the same, pretty much. The issues are the same. But go ahead.
What do you think the first step could be to create
Yeah.
greater healing?
Well, pretty much that actually is the motivation for my book, because what I'm talking about is really understanding how abuse and neglect function, the symptoms that people have when they can't escape abuse and neglect, and when they don't find any way to heal from it, they don't have treatment. And to really understand our symptomology on a large level. And I take that right out of family systems, which is very often, for instance, you see, and I used to work a lot with children, a lot more than I ended up doing because I realized that the work was with their parents. But often a child would come to therapy symptomatic. They were, being really aggressive to other children. They were failing in school. They were having nightmares. They had excessive fears. They were wetting the bed. And most often, their symptoms were really about the dysfunction in their family, and most often about conflict between their parents. So they were the symptom bearers for the lack of peace and safety and love in their families. And I think we have to know that about some of our most symptomatic people in our society, that they also are the symptom bearers for the ills of larger social systems and political systems, rather than that they're just bad people. Like, these were not bad children. In fact, there was nothing wrong with them. They were showing the world the pain that was in their families and calling for help. And so, that's why I ended up working so much with the parents, because really the work was with them. And when they understood that their lack of ability or desire or whatever it was to resolve some of the conflicts in their home were directly impacting their children, then they were motivated to try to change some of their behaviors. So I think big picture is we have to be educated about our own psychology, what contributes to abuse and what helps heal it. And the second part of my book is all about some of the paradigm shifts that we need to look at in our social functioning, and some of the specific tools that people learn when they're in good therapy about how to resolve conflict rather than fuel it. because we're going to have conflict. We're just right now, we're not going to agree on everything. But we can choose how we deal with it. And we can deal with it either with a commitment to peaceful resolution or separating in peace, or we can continue what we're doing, which is escalating threats of violence, war, use of weapons, and discrimination against many, many people.
So do you suggest that we bring facilitators, trained facilitators into Congress and into working with our leaders on all different levels to begin yeah,
I
okay,
do. And again, it would have to be something, I think, because so much of what we do now is from a position of force. I'm going to make you do this because I believe it's true. And that's one of the principles that we have to change. So what I really feel is, and of course, change can happen from the top down or the bottom up, but the more our general populace is informed and understands the value of bringing the best psychology into the political realm, into conversation, into agenda, into best practices, the more we can advocate for leaders who have some degree of mental health in their sights. That the policies and practices they want to promote are ones that actually help more people than hurt them. So part of it is general education of the populace. So because an informed populace is going to make different choices
of
about who
course.
they choose to be leaders, and an informed leadership. When I worked in a sexual abuse treatment program when I first was finishing graduate school, and one of the things, and we worked with everybody. We worked with perpetrators, we worked with adult victims of sexual abuse, we worked with all the family members, all ages of children, and what we called the non-offending parent, which was the parent who was there but not the abuser. So it was a family-based treatment program designed to help the family heal. And one of the many things that we did was cooperate with police and social services and really try to educate them about the dynamics of sexual abuse. So it wasn't just a good evil thing, like this person's bad or this person's going to get off because, they're blaming the victim or whatever the dynamics were that were dysfunctional. So educating different levels of society that interact with dysfunction and abuse and trauma and neglect and violence is also part of it, as well as, yes, educating our leaders. So we had people that spoke with the police and social services, and they were invited in, obviously. And I think it has to be by some kind of informed consent, not force,
Of
because
course.
force is what we're dealing with now that doesn't work.
Right. So if members of Congress stood up and said, okay, we're tired of this. We're tired of this dysfunction. We want to function as a healthy body. How
Right,
can we do this?
right.
Yeah.
And what
And
could
then
we
they
try
can look
out?
at different plans. Yeah.
Right. What could we try out? Because what we're doing isn't working. However, one of the difficulties is that it is working for some people. And when people in positions of power really want to hold on to their power because it brings them great influence and it gives them standing and it gives them authority and it gives them wealth and it gives them control, um, then that's part of what we need to educate people about, that kind of use of power is actually not in service of the general welfare of the family of America. And I keep calling it the family of America because we're all part of this and we're all affected by
True.
it.
Very true. Phyllis, this has been wonderful. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best place is to go to my website. It's www.phyllisleavitt.com, and you can contact me through my website. I'm happy to interact and talk with anyone. You can find my book, America in Therapy, on with all the major booksellers. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I have lots of interviews on YouTube. I have blogs and interviews on my website. So those are the best places to reach me. I have articles on Substack. Where else? uh, that's it. And also have for anyone who does contact me on my website, right now I have a free PDF that's called The 6 Secrets to Repairing Conflict, Repairing Relationship After Conflict, sorry. And that's yours for free. And it's also part of my book, but I adapted it in this PDF for just your own personal use in your own life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Imagine Peace is brought to you by 10 Million for World Peace. Join our daily 7-minute guided meditations for world peace and monthly healing circles at 10millionforworldpeace.org. Together we can create a peaceful, happy planet.